Welcome back. So literally welcome back because I had actually talked about this white Tanchjim Mino TWS set a little while back, and I just basically didn't review it because it didn't really work. Still doesn't work. I still was never able to update it. Couldn't really get it to function usable as a TWS and kind of put it away back in the box. So sometime later, Tanchjim kind of reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you interested in reviewing the Mino?" And I said, "Yep, already did. It's broken in 10 different ways." And they said, "You need to update it." So I said, "I tried that. Doesn't work. It doesn't update." And then they kind of decided that it was a lost hope and said, "We'll send you one that's already updated and it'll be fine." And so that is the black one. The black one was updated up to firmware 1.36, I believe is what the number was. And yes, it actually works with the app, and it actually functions and doesn't drop connection every 2 seconds, and it actually is something that's reviewable. So this is what the black one looks like. It looks suspiciously like the white one, but in black or kind of gray, depending on the lighting. But yeah, pretty much what the white one looks like. It's okay. If you're into this style, it's okay. So this is the case. You've probably seen this one already as well, but not too much in the box. So let's jump right into it, and we'll kind of start at the top and say, so what's really special about this one? So other than the Tanchjim brand TWS, it's really tuned like a U-shaped IEM with a 10mm dynamic driver. So that's kind of cool. You don't see that every day. You see some smaller drivers, lots of smaller drivers. You see some bigger ones. Having a 10mm that's actually tuned by a well-known company, I think that's a pretty cool thing. $40 price tag. You get ANC, transparency mode. You get some app support with it. We'll take a look at that in 1 second. Mostly, it really hits Tanchjim's target, which is a lower bass, lower treble style than Harman, and we'll take a look at that as well. So let's kind of walk through some of these things that I just said we will talk about in a second. So these are essentially what the main screens on the app actually look like. So this is the really the home screen where it lets you choose from the ANC mode between transparency and ANC, and also those kind of work. I wouldn't say those are the best examples of transparency or ANC, but they do something. Battery meters, and then you get a custom button, sound settings, and a quick user guide, which I think is actually blank, and then the firmware, which mine just says you have the latest firmware. So if you want to customize the buttons, you actually get a cool menu. You don't see this one all that often for customization, the taps, and at least list the taps as opposed to the user manual, which does not. Sound settings are where I would say you are going to spend most of your time. It comes with the default sound setting, and we'll look at that graph in a second. Then you get lots of other ones. I thought popular was okay because it boosts the bass, and we'll take a look at that. You do have an ear detection switch, which I didn't actually play around with, but in theory, if you pull it out of your ear with ear detection on, it will pause your music. Volume memory actually does work. It actually remembers what the volume was, or at least mine reset to 0. I'm not sure which one it was remembering, but I'll give it credit for remembering something. Custom sound is really an EQ, sort of a EQ/PEQ. You can actually customize the frequency. So you get a slider, which is pretty typical for EQ, but if you actually click on the button for the frequency, you can set the frequency specifically. So if you don't want 200, you can set it at 300 and then adjust that slider. You also get a Q value down here. So kind of a mix between EQ and PEQ. It's really hard to do it without seeing a graph of it if you're doing PEQ style with Q values. So you're better off using it in some other application than typing them in here. And again, typing them in here isn't all that great. So yeah, this is all pretty cool. None of this stuff worked on my first set, so it was actually cool to see it all work. And I think they did a pretty reasonable job with that. So this is what the graph looks like. And as I said, so I actually have two targets here. So the Tanchjim target is the lower target. So like I said, it is a lower base target. So this is a pretty lean target. The Harman is here. And those of you who are familiar with the Harman target, you know it kind of bumps out over here, then it gets quite lean over here. So you can kind of see where the two join together. And I would say the Tanchjim target is pretty lean. That's more of a neutral. I called it a U-shaped style, depending on where you are. I like this is the popular, so bumping out the bass a little bit, it's a little more U-shaped. But the default is actually pretty lean. It's actually leaner than Harman, and then you get a really flat bottom, and then you get this steeper rise, and it actually rises not quite. So and this is the thing, is their target actually dips out a little bit lower than Harman, but if you actually look at the tuning of Mino, it's actually bumped above. So I think their target, depending on where you are, I think their target, they sort of bump out over here and then under here, or just slightly above. But I think the gist of it was that they were going to implement their target on a TWS and give you some ways to modify it. Like if you want a little bit more bass, you just choose the popular EQ, and that's what you get. So I think the idea is pretty cool. I think their target's okay. I think people will like it. For a TWS, I tend to go a little bit more V-shaped, a little bit more bass, so that's why I stuck with the popular. If I'm outside and there's a little bit more noise, I kind of like a little bit more bass, and the treble level is actually kind of fine. But for the most part, I do like the custom EQ, and that's where I spent the majority of my time, was with that. So what is Glitchy? So in addition to the non-functional set that I bought, there are some other things that are actually still a bit glitchy on it. So as I said, the first one I bought, unable to do the firmware, couldn't get any app support, and Tanchjim's got the new one, like I said. And so where do you get the app, right? This app, I think if you're on iOS, I think you have access to this app just by searching for Tanchjim. If you're on Google or on Android, I have no idea where you're supposed to get the app from. I was sent the app by Tanchjim directly. So if you actually have this and you're looking for the updated app, I would actually reach out to them on Android at least and ask them for the updated app. I'm not sure what the current version of the app is. I have the one when I first talked to them about it. So if it was updated, it doesn't update itself. This whole thing they did a lot of work, but didn't really take it over the finish line. They kind of didn't get it to the refined point of where it's like a TWS from SoundPeats, where it's in the App Store and it always updates itself. Firmware updates work. These are kind of glitchy things. Same thing on the custom EQ. I was using custom EQ quite a lot on this guy because it sounds pretty good with custom EQ. And then all of a sudden it stopped working. And by not working, I mean the EQ wasn't flat. I mean, there was no sound. If I would I was choosing, custom sound here, and the sound would stop. No matter what I had here, no sound. And then I would put default, and I would have sound again. And I ended up resetting everything and uninstalling and reinstalling. And this whole thing is just kind of glitchy, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because I don't want too many people spending $40 on something that feels about 3/4 of the way done. So sound. Again, the default tuning is really light on bass. It kind of boosts it upper mid, and I highly suggest using the EQ presets or trying the custom EQ, and I think that'll get you somewhere reasonable. My typical use of TWS is outside. I like it more V-shaped. This one tends to be a lot less energetic. Again, this is, and maybe they actually show it on here too. Yeah, so you kind of get a lower bass, and then this is just under Harman, and this whole thing sounds a little less energetic. You get a nice peak at 3K, and that's kind of energetic, but the rest of it's a little bit less energetic, and even the peak I think is actually less energetic, and that just means you have to turn up the volume a little bit more. Again, they do volume memory, so that kind of is helpful there, but I do think the mids needed a little bit more volume to come forward and open up, and the driver is okay. Not sure its default tuning was really the right match for this one. Technically, it sounds okay, but something about the tuning or the EQ or the driver just doesn't really bring out the separation and the technical capabilities of what the driver can probably do. It's a 10mm driver. It should be able to do something sort of standing out-ish at $40, and it doesn't quite get there. So the bass, like I said, that default is a bit leaner than Harman. Not common these days to go that lean. Not really for the bass enthusiasts, but EQ will get you there with one click, like I said. Not really sure if it's really better with more bass, but it's certainly there to try. So that's what I said. This is basically the one-click popular preset, and it gives you, I don't know if that is 4 dB of extra bass, especially in the mid-bass kind of area here. So that sounds pretty good with popular music. The rest of this is, I think, actually stays the same, but this is, the blue line is Tanchjim's graph, and the green one is actually my measured one, so it's a little bit off there. This should actually be down exactly where that one is, and the AK should actually align. So yeah, I'm not going to fix all that either, but anyway. So mids, as I said, it just needs a little bit more volume to come forward. But even so, more of a casual listening set that's tuned like a more expensive driver, right? The Tanchjim Target probably sounds really nice on a very expensive driver. This driver is kind of okay. I'm not sure the U-shape exposing the mids in the way it does, even for a TWS, it doesn't really stand out in resolution and detail and dynamics and speed, right? Kind of a mature tuning for a driver that didn't really stand up to being exposed in that way. So I think the idea was right, but something between the EQ and the driver, something is kind of slightly off-center there. Treble maybe slightly bright depending on the music and preset. Tuning avoided major problems, and I think that was an important thing to do. But on the other hand, it just doesn't bring out the best in the driver. You know, I think it is one thing to be non-offensive and not really do anything wrong, not be too peaky. I think they did that part right. But on the other hand, you know, they have a brand and a well-known name, and you kind of hope that they put in a driver and a tuning that really made the two stand out in some way beyond other $40 TWS sets. Stage, again, this one will be a presets and a volume thing. They're all quite different. It's very sensitive to tuning and whether it projects a bit or mostly in your head. A lot of the presets will kind of roll through those. Popular one kind of works, but for the most part, it's kind of an average in your head kind of a TWS thing stage-wise. So that is what I got on Mino. So thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.